G'day sinners, welcome back to another episode of Behind the Chateau Doors. In today's episode, I'm reviewing Getting Away From It All, Leaving the Chateau. For those unaware, after a recent 2-week tumultuous period of mourning, Stephanie visited Dubai with Jerry for his birthday, and after 3 days where they barely left their hotel, Stephanie met up with Michael Potts for a rendezvous. I have a sneaking suspicion the timelines are skewed again, as I think this video was filmed the same time as the previous week's video when she was feeling low. My analysis of this is simply the weather, what she's wearing, how her hair is styled, and the fact that the 2 doors that were flapping about in the last week's episode still do appear to be flapping about in this week's video. Stephanie continues to prove that she keeps all the gifts received from the Chateau by showing off a hedgehog keyring. Holy bejesus, what the devil's happened to that garden? Last time I saw it was over a year ago, and Davy and Dan had planted all these plants. What's happened to them all? Have they died? Nick's told her not to plant any more plants as there's water restrictions on, so they'll likely die, and she's talking about laying tarpaulin down to protect the beds from weeds. I'm sorry, but I'd be royally pissed off after having laid that many plants for them all to freaking die. So I'm gathering all those plants were paid for by Patreon money. Don't they have 5 gardeners? Aren't they all paid by Patreon money too? What's going on here? What is Philip wearing? I shouldn't judge what people wear. But he dresses like my great aunt, and she smells of mothballs. After studying some etchings, Philip believes he's found the lost chapel of the chateau. Philip is thrilled at this discovery, and you can see it on his face. It's quite remarkable to see how exhilarated he is at this discovery. I have always wondered, for somebody of his age, why would he want to be living in a chateau in the middle of nowhere? But seeing his excitement and what he wears, it's all beginning to make sense. He just loves being around old things. Stephanie catches up with Nick again, who is coincidentally wearing the same clothing as he was wearing in last week's episode, and he is seen logging 2 of the dead oak trees that were threatening the walled garden. Stephanie's now back in her boudoir, where she has put on some makeup, and she's about to do a sponsored post. Seeing as I won't be receiving any cut from Stephanie's sponsored post, I won't be discussing it. Let's just say the dresses she's promoting are very expensive and not to my taste. Stephanie pairs her red dress with a pair of black Louboutins that she claims were a gift from Philip for her birthday last year. One of my trusty sinners have informed me that that was not the case, as the pair that were gifted to Stephanie on her birthday were beige Louboutins. Porky Pie caught it a lie. Now, Michael Potts has arrived, so this must bring the timeline up to the date of the recent Cadeau. If you've not yet watched my bad review of the most recent Cadeau episode, I'll leave a link to it in the pinned comments below. We learn that Michael was in the neighbourhood of Paris and decided to drive to Chateau Diaries just for a few hours, as he had to leave early the next morning. This little detour added 8 hours to his trip. There's something stinky-winky here, as we now know that Stephanie was to see Michael in a few days' time in Dubai. Let me know in the comments below, sinners, why you think Michael made this fleeting visit. We next see Stephanie heading off to London, where she is reunited with Scottman and Baghead, the elusive Nick. Ooh, interesting. Philip is also in London, where he plans to stay there with the elusive Nick for a few days and have some fun. Yes, lots of fun in that beige robe. Sinners, perhaps you can help me. Why does Stephanie's £1 million apartment look like it's from the Borrowers? Or is Philip 7 foot? That door is awfully short. Goody, Stephanie and Scottman are finally on their way to Dubai, and it doesn't appear that they've been upgraded. Where's their friends in high places? After arriving into Dubai, Stephanie and Scottman check in and treat themselves to a dinner, where they are amused at receiving gloves to wear. I suppose if hygiene is at the forefront of your cleansing routine, you will find wearing gloves a novelty. It's now the morning, and Scottman has already been for a swim and has found a useful way to use up some spare tartan. We learn they're staying at the Hilton Jumeirah on the man-made island that is shaped to look like a palm. And Stephanie is now relaxing by the pool whilst reading a book. After some fun in the sun, where I hope she has sunscreened those pasty legs, Stephanie and Scottman are now visiting the Burj Khalifa, which is the tallest building in the world. I'm sure there's many of you sinners that have visited Dubai and the Burj Khalifa, but if you haven't, I would suggest watching this YouTube video, which gives you an insight on how the Burj Khalifa was built. After a short boat ride, they return back to the restaurant of the glove infamy, where Scottman is treated to a birthday cake. Scottman now needs to be tucked into bed and read his bedtime story, Aloysius the Ram, at the Bric-a-Brac. For those not aware, the author and illustrator is an Australian, and this is the second book that they have produced regarding Aloysius the Ram that lives at Stephanie's chateau. All proceeds from the sale of the books go to charity, which is a lovely gesture. However, there has been some chit-chat on the comments section noting that Selma and Marie, that's the florist Marie, are missing from this book. We now farewell Scottman as he returns back to England, and Stephanie eagerly awaits for Michael Potts' arrival. Times must be tough with the Patreon numbers down. Stephanie now downgrades herself from the Hilton Jumeirah and moves across town to Old Town, which provides cheaper accommodation. We learn that Stephanie has booked a suite, which comes with a king-size bed and a living area, which has a pull-out bed that Michael proudly displays is where he'll be sleeping. What's interesting is that that sofa bed is not made up. I'm fairly sure that the Hilton, a 4-star hotel, would have made up that bed upon his arrival. They wouldn't have expected him to make up the bed. Nevertheless, I am not alluding to any rumpy-pumpy shenanigans going on. They have been a couple and were a couple for 10 years. I don't think there's any issue for them to be able to share a king-size bed. The guy was filming the Formula 1 in Saudi Arabia for a few days. Let the guy have a bed. I don't think they have any secrets. If you haven't noticed yet by now, sinners, I can be in the detail. So I looked up this Hilton in the Old Town and found their rooms. The suite, which came with a king-size bed and the sofa bed, but they did have rooms that had 2 single beds, or for the price comparison, you could have just booked 2 separate rooms. And in true Stephanie fashion, she had to book a hotel room that had pigeons. And what were those pigeons doing? They were shitting all over the outdoor seating. This isn't a hostel. This is a 4-star hotel. After Michael's had a sleepless night on the sofa bed, they awake and they are off for a new adventure. First of all, she's in some orange suit. She wore that whilst on a goddamn ATV. Sandboarding. And also a camel ride. The shoes. This is common knowledge that she wears heels when she climbs ladders and slippers while she's driving dump truck. But she's out in the desert. She's wearing white pointed flats. Sinners, let me know in the comments below what you would wear if you were on a camel ride. After a long journey on their camels, Stephanie and Michael are now sitting down to have a meal and some balls of joy and finish off the evening with some dancing from Natty. My final thoughts on this episode of Chateau Diaries. Renovations, 0. Holidays abroad, 1. Now for some comments. From Coastal, is the clothing you received from a reputable company that doesn't torture ghosts? And Michelle, hello all, just watching Dan, and I'm wondering if you and Amory could take some heavy planking to build Dan a safe ramp. He is really needing a ramp. I'd do it myself, but I'm living in Manitoba, Canada.